Are you confused about boundaries? Want to set them but don't know how? Feel like people walk all over you and there's nothing you can do about it? Or on the flip side, have a partner or friend who claims they have strong boundaries, but you actually feel like maybe what they're doing is not healthy boundary setting at all, but you aren't sure why. This is the video for you. I'm Tabi, I'm a transformational coach, and this week we're going to discuss what boundaries are, what boundaries are not, values versus boundaries, demands versus boundaries, and how to tell if a boundary is healthy or if it's actually control in disguise. Stick around to the end to get my plug and play formula for boundary setting that makes it simple and easy to come up with a powerful and clear boundary. Let's jump right in. First of all, I think boundaries have a bad reputation. They're viewed as harsh or strict or mean, but that's probably because what we've been taught are boundaries are actually demands in disguise, or ultimatums, or some form of control. No wonder we don't want to set boundaries and they don't feel good. They're not boundaries. So what actually are boundaries then? A boundary is something that you set for yourself to protect your mental or physical health, your energy, your values, your time. It's not about controlling someone else's actions, getting them to change what they're doing or stop doing something that you don't like. It's about how you respond and what you will do, your actions, to remain in integrity with yourself. So basically a boundary is, if this happens, I will do this to take care of myself. What boundaries are not. They are not ultimatums meant to manipulate. They are not punishments for other people's choices. They are not ways to avoid discomfort. They are not expectations placed on others that you can't enforce yourself. So an example of a boundary is, if you raise your voice with me, I will step away from this conversation. Or even better, I notice that your volume is rising, so I'm going to take a break from this conversation and I'll come back in 30 minutes to continue it. And then you leave. You have to follow through on the boundary that you set. Another example is boundaries that you set that then dictate your actions, such as, I do not work on the weekends. So when somebody from work calls you on the weekend, you don't have to think about what you're going to do because you already have a boundary in place and you know what it is. You don't answer the phone. You don't even have to worry about it or feel guilty about it because you already have a boundary in place that tells you you don't do that thing. And then on Monday, if your coworker's like, hey, I called you about that report, you can be like, oh, I don't answer work calls on the weekend, but I'm here now. What do you need? Clear, simple, not confrontational. It's very hard to argue with a good boundary. And now they know that you don't answer calls on the weekend. That's what you do. You have a work-life balance. You might even inspire other people with your boundaries sometimes. So boundaries are different than requests, demands, or controlling behavior. So what are requests? A request is when you ask somebody to do something that would support you or your needs in a relationship. You are inviting, not insisting. So think, would you be willing to? Examples, can you please text me if you're running late? Or, I'd really appreciate it if we could plan ahead for visits in the future. Requests respect the other person's autonomy. They are allowed to say yes or no. We make requests when the outcome isn't that important. It does matter to us, enough that we're asking for help or support, but it's not as deep as a boundary. And you know that this person can say no because you have other people you can ask, or it's not that important, or it's something that you would like, but not necessarily something that you need. We make requests all the time, and it's really important to understand that it's okay for people to say yes or no and show up for us the ways that they have available. Depending on the depth of your relationship, you can of course decide if somebody is saying no to a lot of your requests. That might be a relationship you pull back from. It's still information and you can respond based on the reactions to your requests. It's important to be in relationships with people who care about what your needs are and try to meet them. So requests are very valuable. Boundaries are a step up from requests, and they have to do with your values and whether those are being respected or not. The next one is pretty tricky, and that's demands versus boundaries. If you struggle with boundaries or setting boundaries, it's very possible that people have thrown demands at you and said that they were boundaries. The fear around boundaries being mean or controlling or harsh is actually all things that are true about demands. So what is a demand, and how can you tell the difference between a boundary and a demand? A demand is when you or someone else insists that someone else's behavior changes in a specific way, often with a threat, either spoken or unspoken. So think, do this or else. So an example of a demand, if you don't stop talking to them, I'll leave you. This is a bit easy to get confused with a boundary. It kind of sounds like a boundary. You are asking for something, giving a consequence, but it's actually a demand rooted in controlling this person's behavior. A boundary would sound more like, I'm not comfortable being in a relationship where there's ongoing contact with somebody you've dated in the past. If that continues, I'll have to step away from this relationship to honor what feels safe and respectful for me. Those have a pretty different feeling. And the difference is clarity. One is a demand, trying to control behavior with an implicit threat or named threat, and the other is a boundary, telling somebody how you feel, why, what the importance of it is to you, what value of yours has been ignored or threatened. So one tries to control the person, and the other takes responsibility for your own needs and choices with clarity and not force. The demand says you need to do this or else there's a punishment. The boundary says I'm going to do this to protect myself for this reason. One is somebody else's actions and the other is your own. Is there still an outcome and a consequence to the other person? Yeah, there is. And that's okay. That's a regular part of relationship. But threatening, forcing, demanding, not so good. Setting a boundary, healthy. There's a big difference there. And it can be hard to see in moments, especially when you are frustrated or upset or worked up. Let's do another one because I feel like this is definitely a difficult thing to get clear on. Here's a demand that sounds like a boundary. You need to stop canceling on me last minute or I won't make plans with you anymore. Kind of sounds like a boundary, but it's not. You are naming a behavior and a consequence, boundary, but it's actually a demand. And here's why. It's focused on controlling the other person's behavior. You need to stop. It comes with an ultimatum style threat, or I won't, and the energy is usually charged, reactive, not grounded. Now, if you say it in a grounded way, it sounds more like a boundary, but the demand aspects are still there. It's putting the responsibility on them to change so that you feel okay. That's such a big distinction between demands and boundaries. In a boundary, you already feel okay because you know who you are and you know what your values are. You are able to come to somebody and say, this thing that you're doing does not align with my values, and so I'm going to remove myself. I'm going to have an action. I'm going to take care of something so that I remain in my values. A demand says, you need to change because you're making me uncomfortable, because you're pushing me, because you're doing something to me. I'm not okay unless you change. We need to learn to be okay in ourselves. Other people's behavior and actions affect us, but they don't control us. How somebody behaves does not make us feel a certain way. Everything inside of us is what controls how we feel. We need to learn how to react out of that grounded and safe place instead of reacting out of that angry, upset place. That's the difference between demands and boundaries. Now, you might be getting the picture that boundaries are not always the easiest thing because it requires you to think about them, to stop, to be grounded, to be centered, and to know what your values are. If you're like, I don't know what my values are, that's a good place to start. There's no real way to set boundaries until you have a sense of something interfering with your values. That doesn't mean you have to know them all perfectly or know exactly what they are or that they can never change. They absolutely will. All you have to do is to be able to recognize that something somebody did or said triggered you. And then you need to acknowledge that, own that reaction, and figure out what of your values was pushed against and create a boundary around that. Owning your own actions and responsibility for your feelings. Make sense? In the case of you need to stop canceling on me last minute or I won't make plans with you anymore, demand. An example of a boundary would be when plans are canceled at the last minute, it impacts my schedule and my energy. If it keeps happening, I'll stop making plans in advance and only say yes when it works in the moment. See, you're not saying you're not going to hang out with him anymore. especially if you still want to. You're just saying, I'm not going to plan in advance with you because you keep canceling on me. So, hey, if it's today and you want to go to the movies and I'm available, I'll say yes. But if you ask me to do something next week, I'm going to tell you, I'll think about it. Why don't you ask me on the day of? You set a boundary. Now you can move forward having a relationship with this person in a way that doesn't upset you and lets you be in your integrity. So this version is focused on your needs and limits. It's neutral and non-blaming in tone. It's centered around your choices and not their behavior. And it's something you can follow through on regardless of what they do. You cannot control what they do or what their reaction is, even if it feels like you can. But you can let them know what your responses are going to be. So, quick tip, if it starts with, you need to, it's probably a demand. If it starts with, I've noticed, or when this happens, you're likely on the right path towards a boundary. So, why does this matter? Healthy boundaries let you be in right relationship with the people in your life. It ensures for you and for them that you're in the relationship because you want to be and because you're a good fit for each other and not because you're staying out of fear or insecurity. It lets you shift from control to clarity and helps others more easily understand your needs and show up for you in the ways that you want them to. Doesn't everyone wish it was easier to give people what they wanted and needed? Setting clear boundaries does exactly that. It's one of the biggest gifts you can give someone that you care to be in a relationship with. When you shift from control to clarity, your relationships get better, your inner peace expands, and your self-trust grows. So now that we know all about boundaries, here is my simple formula to create powerful and clear boundaries. All you have to do is plug in the words that describe the open parts of this phrase. When action happens, I feel impact on you. To take care of myself, if it keeps happening, I will outcome. And that's all you need. Sit down, get some clarity on what's going on for you, plug it into that phrase, and practice it. Practice with a person that feels safe, practice with yourself in the mirror, practice with your mom on the phone. Practice it so that the words come clearly and easily to you. You don't want to be stumbling and flustered and freaking out when you're trying to set a boundary. To be fair, you might be in the beginning. That's normal. Setting boundaries isn't easy. We're afraid of people's reactions. We're afraid they're not going to like us anymore. It triggers a lot of insecurities in us to set boundaries. But if it is a value of yours, it's worth it. Now, if you're still feeling just a little unclear on boundaries or are thinking, I'm not going to do that, it's so harsh and mean, then this next part is for you. I wanted to make it really clear that boundaries are not for annoyances or small slights. Boundaries are what we need to protect when someone is pushing us to do something that threatens our integrity. So a roommate leaving dirty dishes in the apartment may require requests, conversations, consequences, but not necessarily a boundary, depending on how much it is affecting your ability to be true to yourself. It's based on your values. Maybe a deep value of yours is cleanliness. Then a boundary may be an order for the messy roommate. So you have a roommate that leaves dirty dishes all over the apartment overnight. A boundary might look like this. When you leave your dirty dishes out overnight, I feel disrespected and like you don't care that we're getting bugs in the apartment. To take care of my need for cleanliness, I will hire a cleaner to come in once a week, and that will be added to our monthly utility bill. Or maybe you can't do that. Maybe their name's on the lease and yours isn't. Or you just feel way too awkward about doing something like that. Then you're going to have to figure out how deep this value is for you and what you're willing to do about it. Is setting a boundary worth it to you? Because you have to stick to what you say, or you lose integrity and no one's going to listen to you anymore. You need to practice what you preach, set your boundaries, and then follow through. And you can start at any time. Even if you have set boundaries and not followed through on them before, you can start today to be a person who lives in their integrity, who sets boundaries and follows through with them. So then the boundary might look like the same beginning, but you end with, to take care of myself. If there are dishes left out overnight more than once a week, at the end of this month, I will be moving out. That might be the only action that you can take. You can't control somebody else's actions, but you can control your own. Another thing in this situation is to clean up after them yourself. It's not ideal, but maybe you can have a conversation and say, I'm going to pick up the dishes every night and clean them. What is something that you are willing to do to help out the household? And then just be quiet and let them answer. That's another video. And maybe you would like it to be clean, but it's not a core value of yours. Then you might have a discussion and ask for solutions you can come up with together, but you're not going to need to dictate the outcome because it's not at the level of a boundary being crossed. It's not at the level of challenging who you are as a person and your deep-seated values. I hope this helped bring you some clarity and some understanding around boundaries versus requests and demands, and to give you a better sense of the people in your life and if they're setting boundaries or not. Comment below with the boundary that you're setting. Like, share, and subscribe for more grounded wellness content. Remember that you don't have to do everything. You just have to do what's true to you. Thanks for being here. I hope you have a lovely day, a lovely week, and a lovely life. And I'll see you next week.